Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ice-Burgh Recap, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins game recaps and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts from by searching Tip of the Ice-Burgh. The Penguins get back on the right track coming out of the All-Star break with a 3-0 victory over a very good Winnipeg Jets team at home at PPG Paints Arena. The top storyline in this one was one singular play that turned the fortunes of the entire game. Obviously, we hope Noel Acciari is okay, but he takes a massive hit from Brendan Dillon, who gets a match penalty as a result, 5-minute major, and the Penguins power play takes advantage, something we haven't been able to say much this season, but they do. They score twice on that man advantage, that 5-minute major in the second period, and they take that momentum and carry it over to a 3-0 victory over the Winnipeg Jets. Solid performance from Tristan Jarry, solid performance from Jake Guentzel in his 500th NHL game, and a good game for the Pens to get the victory over the Winnipeg Jets and start off the unofficial second half of the National Hockey League season. Let's move over to the goal recap here, because it was Chris Letang early getting the Penguins on the board. The Pens were very game early on in this one. That was what I was most concerned about coming into this game. The Penguins have shown, especially throughout the month of January, they showed that they could be subsequent to slow starts. And coming off of a 10-day break, would they start slow against a very, very good Winnipeg Jets team? The answer to that was no. Penguins had a new look in the forward lineup. Jesse Puljujarvi making his Penguins debut, Riley Smith returning from injury. And they rolled four lines over for the first 5 or 6 minutes and looked pretty good doing it. So they kept the momentum going. And then it was Jesse Puljujarvi and the third line that contributed to the first goal. Ends up being a Chris Letang goal, his 4th of the season, unassisted simply because of the forechecking power of the Penguins, forcing the turnover from the Winnipeg Jets. Letang takes advantage, gets a sweet backhand shot and passes it past Connor Hellebuck to put the Penguins up 1-0 in this one. Then after the first period ended, I mentioned the massive hit to Noel Acciari, a 5-minute major, and the Penguins go to work on the power play, taking advantage, scoring twice on that 5-minute major, first coming from Jeff Carter in front of the net, his 6th goal of the season. Lars Eller picks up the assist. He deflected it in the high slot. That would be his 7th assist of the season, and Erik Karlsson picks up a secondary assist because he was the one that shuffled the puck to the net to begin with, his 28th assist of the season. A little bit later in that power play, seemingly a very similar goal, Penguins get to the net front. Brian Rust puts home the rebound, his 12th goal of the season, and that makes it 3-0. There's a mistake on the visual graphic here, but it was 3-0 for the Penguins after that Rust goal, his 12th of the year. Jake Guentzel picks up the primary assist in his 500th game, and Sidney Crosby continues his dominant pace with his 51st point of the season and his 24th assist. The Penguins did give up a goal in the third period, but the Penguins video staff was able to make sure that they knew it was offside on the ice. Goal gets overturned, and the Penguins finish this one off by a final score of 3-0 when it hits triple zeros. A good game for the Penguins. Solid performances in many different areas. They did struggle in certain areas. Zone exits was the big thing that I saw in this game, that early on, it was a slight issue, and then in the second period, it became a major issue when the Penguins were at 5-on-5. They took a couple penalties, and they got a couple of shifts where they were hemmed into their own zone for 2 minutes, and most of those shifts were Chris Letang's, that he ended up being out there for 2 minutes, and the Penguins just couldn't seem to get the puck down the other end of the ice and couldn't seem to get that change with the long bench change in the second period. So that's something that was a small minor detail that it looked pretty bad on Tuesday night, but the Penguins obviously are able to hopefully go out there and fix it before they take on the Minnesota Wild this weekend, before they take on the Winnipeg Jets in what should be a highly contested rematch on Saturday night. 3 stars in this one. Third one, I'm going to give it to Jake Guentzel. Celebrated his 500th NHL game with an assist and nearly a highlight reel play in the third period. Penguins were up 3-0. He took the puck into the zone, danced around a defender. He tried to backhand pass it to Sidney Crosby, but a Jets defender was able to get back into the play and cut that pass off. If that pass would have went through, would have been an absolute highlight reel goal or highlight reel assist for Jake Guentzel. I think he should have probably shot the puck, but again, he didn't see that trailing defender who was going to come back and eventually make the play on the pass. But a solid game, solid performance from Jake Guentzel. He continues to be very, very impressive for the Penguins, and this next month is going to ramp up as far as the off-ice noise. I'm excited to see how he handles it on the ice, and so far, so good for the Penguins, number 59. Second star of this game, I'm going to give to Chris Letang, and not just because he scored the prettiest goal of the game, not just because he scored his first game-winning goal of this season, but because he led all Penguin skaters with 27 minutes and 19 seconds of ice time. No other Penguin was over 23 minutes in this game. Letang was a workhorse in this one. I mentioned he was caught on multiple 2-minute shifts, and the Penguins were able to withstand with him on the ice. I thought he had a really solid game, not to mention his backhand goal, not to mention the fact that he accounted for 57% of the expected goals when he was on the ice at 5-on-5 with the Penguins on a team that, let's face it, at 5-on-5, after that first period, the Winnipeg Jets started to carry the play a little bit. Chris Letang was able to bounce back and push back. I thought he had a really stellar game that first game back. And obviously, everybody mentioned, one of the big storylines coming in, he cut his hair. So far, so good. One game with the haircut, he has a goal and had a very stellar performance on the back end. So second star of the game for this one goes to Chris Letang. First star of the game in this, I think it's pretty obvious. Tristan Jarry was very sharp from early on in this one. He only faced 4 shots in the first 10 to 15 minutes of this game, but it seemed like all 4 of those shots were high danger chances or high quality chances for a very, very potent Winnipeg Jets offense. I mean, they have a handful of guys that can really shoot the puck. Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers. These guys are all dangerous with the puck on their stick, and they showed it on Tuesday night. But Tristan Jarry was up to the task. Like I said, tested early, but not often early in the game. He was really tested in the second period at 5-on-5 whenever the Penguins weren't on that 5-minute major. And then in the third period, the Jets pushed hard. There were a couple times where you looked at the Penguins, and that was probably the second major thing that I saw last night that was negative for the Penguins. It was their zone exits in the second period, and it was the way they took their foot off the gas in the third period. But that is nothing new for this team. That's nothing new for this organization, as they've been doing that over the past couple of seasons. I just don't understand why they were playing so well in the first period. Yes, they got outplayed a little bit at 5-on-5 in the second period, but they completely took their foot off the gas pedal for the first 10 minutes of the third. They did start to push back a little bit. That's something we haven't seen very, very often, even with a 3-0 lead. And I think part of that was they gave up that goal that ended up being disallowed. They noticed, all right, the momentum is really starting to shift. They kicked it into high gear, got a couple of good offensive zone shifts, and ended up closing out that game with a 3-0 victory. And a big part of that was Tristan Jarry, when the Penguins were on their back foot, when they were on their heels, Tristan Jarry stood tall, time and time again, finishes with a 23 save shutout, and now advances his league-leading number of shutouts to 6 on the season, which is also, shout out to Bob Grove, tied for third among all Penguins history when it comes to shutouts in a season, one away from tying Tom Barrasso for second with 7th. And obviously the leader in that category in single season shutouts for the Penguins is Marc-Andre Fleury with 10. So plenty of time left for Tristan Jarry to move up that fun little leaderboard, but a stellar performance in this one from Tristan Jarry continues to be one of the most pleasant surprises of the Penguins season. Final thoughts in this one. Got to give a shout out to Jesse Puljujärvi. Makes his Penguins debut after signing a 2-year contract over the weekend. First NHL action since May of last season when he played in the playoffs for the Carolina Hurricanes. Has double hip resurfacing surgery 8 months ago and has finally made his way back to NHL ice. Played .941, and you could tell early in the game it seemed like Mike Sullivan was looking to shelter his minutes a little bit. Only about 3 minutes of ice time. He had the least amount of ice time of all Penguin skaters in the first period. And then with the injury to Noel Acciari, he was forced to play a little bit more as the game went on, but finishes with a decent 9 minutes and 41 seconds for your first game back in about 8-9 months at the NHL level. Has 2 shots on goal, 2 hits, and finishes with a +1 rating. As I mentioned, he was on the ice and actually dumped the puck in, which led to the Chris Letang goal in the first period of play. I thought he looked pretty good in this one. Nothing spectacular, but certainly not anything negative to say about Jesse Puljujärvi. He's a big body out there. He looks like he's been moving pretty well out there, and he plays physically. At least he has the appearance that he's going to hit somebody whenever he goes in, which not everybody on the Penguins has that. Obviously, Noel Acciari does. He's now out for an unforeseen amount of time. He's being evaluated, as we learned after the game by Mike Sullivan. Said he was in good spirits. He's feeling okay. But obviously, when you see a hit like that, not only the contact from Brendan Dillon to Noel Acciari's head, but the contact between Noel Acciari's head and the ice, that's a very scary thing, and that's something that you would imagine is going to take some time to come back from. If not, then, kudos to Noel Acciari. That's crazy. But I think in the safety of, the safety of his career and the safety of his actual personal life, I would imagine he probably gets held out for at least a couple days, at least a couple games. Obviously, concussions are very hard to judge, but we'll have to wait and see. But, Acciari's physical, and getting back to the root of the point here, Jesse Puljujärvi showed a little bit of a physical side, and that's for a player that hasn't played in this league in a very long time. He looked pretty good at Wilkes-Barre, had 9 points in 13 games before getting the call to come up to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I like him on the third line. I like him with Lars Eller. And Rickard Rakell, despite not really being evident through most of the game yesterday, I thought made a couple of sneaky plays that looked pretty solid. Looked like classic Rickard Rakell. So you're hoping that he can build on that, and you're hoping that he can do that more often throughout the game. So I like the Penguins' third line moving forward of Rickard Rakell, Lars Eller, and Jesse Puljujärvi. We're obviously only one game into the return of Jesse Puljujärvi, so interested to see how that pans out for the Penguins moving forward. Up next, they head to Minnesota for a Friday night matchup with the Flower. Marc-Andre Fleury was already named the starting goaltender by John Hines for Friday night's matchup between the Penguins and the Minnesota Wild. A nice stark difference between most times the Penguins play a Marc-Andre Fleury team where he ends up sitting on the bench. So he will be in the net against the Penguins at XL Energy Center in Minnesota on Friday. Pens versus Fleury on Friday, and then they have a back-to-back where they do take on this Winnipeg Jets team on Saturday night. So 3 games in 5 days coming out of the break. Penguins get a victory in the first one. We'll see what they're able to do in the back-to-back over the weekend. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Ice-Burgh Recap. Thank you so much for everybody tuning in. You remember you can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts from.